Alright, so this is the pressure video in the speed versus pressure passing mini series that I've been working on. So don't forget to like and subscribe to get all your jiu-jitsu questions answered and much more stuff coming in the future on the channel. Leave a comment letting me know you subscribed and I will personally respond, leave you a little message. So the basic characteristics of pressure passing. It's going to be slow, heavy, grinding inch by inch. You're always moving forward. You never want to take a step back. It's very low risk. If you have a little mess up, they recover a little bit of ground or something like that on you. It's just going to be a really small amount. It's not going to be a big drastic movement leading you all the way back to the beginning, or even worse, ending up in a bad spot, a dangerous spot. Pressure passing, you can do it on your feet or the knees, so that's the difference from the speed passing, which is only on the feet. It's lower energy output. It's more about holding, squeezing, isometric strength. More like slow twitch type of person. So, what are the reasons someone would choose to go with a pressure passing style over the speed passing style? Well, the obvious reasons, if you watch the previous video on speed passing, is going to be all the opposites of the stuff I mentioned in there. First off, big guys. So if you're a big guy, it doesn't make sense for almost any big guy to be a speed passer. Being bigger, it just typically means you're going to be slower. And speed passing, it's in the title, it's faster. It's a faster type of passing. And big guys typically have worse cardio. It just makes sense. Like, you got a big, heavy body for your heart to pump all that blood through. It's just harder to have good cardio. So bigger guys are going to want to move slower and move less. But on the flip side of the point about bigger guy, and I did mention the smaller guy in the speed passing video, there's still a good argument for small people to also be into pressure passing. So pressure passing, it's very technical, contrary to what you might hear a lot of people say. I've heard people say, like, oh, it's just people muscling around. But if you look at speed passers, you could just say the same argument in the opposite direction. Like, oh, it's just a fast guy jumping around really fast, or he's super athletic, he's just moving around really fast. These are just your attributes that tend to guide you towards which style you should be playing. But anyways, for the small guy, being smaller, in the smaller the weight class, the more likely they're going to be speed passers, and vice versa. The heavier the weight class gets, the more likely they're going to be into the pressure passing style. So there could be a competitive advantage for someone who decides to go against the grain. Most athletes are going to be like speed passing when you're smaller. So when they train in the academy, training with other people that are trying to be world-class athletes at their weight class, they're going to typically deal with speed passing the whole time. So there's an opportunity right there. Go against the grain, be contrarian, be different, do something differently with the pressure passing. You can have world-class pressure passing in a division where everyone is going to be ready to defend speed passing, because that's just what they're going to see when they're in training. Because they're typically, when a small guy's getting ready for like a world-class competition, and they're dedicating months of their whole life killing themselves to win this division, they're not going to risk it by rolling with big guys. So they're not going to risk an injury and lose everything. So they're going to avoid the bigger guys, especially the closer and closer it gets. So when they're finally tuned and ready to go for competition, it's going to be all about speed passing and defending speed passing when playing guard. So if you spent the whole time just working on pressure passing, then that's going to be an advantage. It's going to be something different that they're probably not going to be ready for. My own professor, Mendes, I'm under the Mendes brothers, but he did this exact strategy. He was a light featherweight, one of the smallest divisions, and I believe it's the one right before Rooster, which is the smallest. And this is what he did. He became like a master pressure passer, and like, you went from seeing all this double guard, because they're always used to playing their guard and defending passing. And then when they do practice defending passing, it's going to be, like I said, smaller guys, speed passing style. So they just were not ready for his game. He just like sliced right through their guards. It honestly seemed pretty easy for him. So very similar to the bigger guy section, older and or less athletic. A lot of the same exact reasons from the bigger section. It's just going to be the cardio and the speed is going to be the main stuff, the main reasons why you might want to go to pressure passing. You can always pressure pass, whether you're athletic or not. So even if maybe you were athletic and you're getting a little bit older and you're losing some of that athleticism that you had, then you can still go into the pressure passing. It's not like you got to quit jiu-jitsu or become horrible. You just got to kind of shift your game a little bit. So like if you're in your mid 40s, you're just getting started and you have like a big beer belly, it doesn't make sense to speed pass. It's not going to work. You're going to get exhausted. You're probably going to get injured. All those same reasons I've been talking about. That's just like an example of what it looks like. Even if you want to play the speed passing, it's just not going to be the best option for you, especially in the beginning. Like, there's a good argument for doing what you want to do because this is an art form and it is fun. But at least in the beginning, just to make it more likely that you'll succeed at sticking with jiu-jitsu, I would not recommend speed passing in that situation. It just leads into like the exhaustion, the extra soreness, the more likely to get injured. This becomes like a mental weight, like day after day after day. Every time you just think about coming to the gym, it was just so hard. It was so exhausting that it starts to wear on you and you don't want to come back. So this goes along with like regression, which I'm going to have a whole video on that. Regression's like a huge thing for me. But speed passing is like the opposite of regression. It's jumping in like head first, like diving off the deep end. And you're trying to do something that you're just not ready for. You're not physically going to be capable of doing this. Enough on that. I'll get into that a little bit more later. And then the slow twitch versus fast twitch, very similar to the other stuff. I guess a little bit different. Like slow twitch versus fast twitch, can you hold and squeeze forever with ease? Like, is that an easy attribute for you? It was easier for me, like jumping around and being explosive. Even when I was young and lighter, like 160 at 23 years old, I still would gas out. So with the cardio, like the big explosive movements, it would just wear me out. And I'd start getting in my head like, oh my God, I'm going to lose. Like, I'm so tired. I can't do anything. But just getting down, squeeze, and grabbing a hold of somebody and putting the squeeze on them, I felt like I could do that forever. So if that's the case for you, like, definitely pressure passing is for you. Safety is a big reason. I kind of mentioned this with like injuries and stuff a little bit earlier. And this is going to be less of a concern for someone who wants to be like a super competitive world-class athlete. Safety's not their top priority. Their top priority is doing whatever is best for them to win, like putting everything else at risk just to win. But for the average practitioner, pressure passing is safer for the training. It's just slower and less explosive. That means there's less room for accidents for both people involved. Like a big giant guy trying to speed pass, just throwing their body, hurling their body through the air at like a much smaller opponent or training partner. Like, odds are someone's going to get hurt. More than likely, it's going to be the smaller guy. It's just very like thoughtless and inconsiderate, and it's going to lead to no one wanting to train with you, which is another aspect that I forgot to even mention in here. But if you're hurting people, whether it's your intention or not, if it's truly unintentional, people don't care. It still hurts. It still injures them. It still keeps them out. It's on you whether you want to do whether it's intentional or not. It's on you to make sure it doesn't happen. And along with the safety point, do you have a job? I kind of mentioned this earlier about the older guy. A job you have to go to in the morning. You have a family. You need to support your family. It doesn't make sense to do the high-risk training and get injured. Or, again, training with somebody else doing the high-risk training. That could get you hurt. For what's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be a hobby. It's not the best way for training, for longevity for a lot of people. The art aspect and like the social media presence. I mentioned this with the speed passing stuff. I do think it would be easier, like I mentioned in that video, to build a following bigger and faster if you're doing stuff that's more like high speed. It just catches people's attention a little bit more and probably a little more aesthetically pleasing, especially to the average person, or even more to like the person that doesn't actually train. But there is definitely a place when this art aspect of jiu-jitsu takes off and people are doing like highlight reel type stuff like I mentioned in my previous video, where it's going to be more about the art and not like the martial part. It just doing what you want to do because you like it, because it's fun, because it's beautiful. When this aspect takes off in jiu-jitsu, then I'm sure, just like when you start training, what everyone rushes to, what it starts with is going to be like the high-flying, big highlight reel, speed passing type stuff. So same thing with that is the pressure passing is going to be like going against the grain, doing something different. So it's like in business, they call this the blue ocean strategy. Like if there's 50,000 people, say, trying to do this art aspect, and 49,500 of them are doing speed passing, and 500 are doing pressure passing. Like it's gonna be a lot easier to stand out in that smaller crowd. And then again, I know I'm in the minority of this, but the clean, precise, surgical manner in which pressure passing is applied is a thing of beauty. I personally prefer watching a good world-class pressure passer over like the big speedy movements. That's just me. I know I'm in the minority on this, but I like that better. I'm all about efficiency. I've never been the type of guy who just works and builds my cardio up super high so I can just keep throwing. I'm more of like the sniper, surgical. I want to conserve all my energy, but only make movements that matter. No wasted movement. And to me, that's more pretty to me to watch. All right, so some examples of some of the best pressure passers ever. Some people you can look at. Lucas Lepre. He's the definition of precision, and he's a master of the knee cut. One of his little slogans or branding was "Be precise." That's like his thing: precision, surgical, no wasted movement. A little story about him is I went to a seminar of his at Crest BJJ in Hampstead. Shout out to Crest. I rolled with him. I was already a black belt. I was a little bit heavier than him. He was probably like 180s. I was like 190s. But he asked me to roll, so of course I wasn't going to say no to that. And then like it was just kind of like what you'd expect after this many years of training. Like it's not like I've never been with world-class athletes before rolling, but his pressure was just insane. It was crazy. He put his shoulder pressure on my jaw, which is something I love to do to people. And my jaw just was like 3 inches, like instantly just shifted over to the side. It was crazy. And like at that point, it was just like, don't break my jaw. Like I was just worried about not getting my jaw broke. He could do whatever he wanted. I just didn't want to break my jaw, kind of thing. Rodolfo Vieira. He's an interesting one. He is definitely a master of pressure passing. One of the best pressure passers ever, especially in the more modern era. He's moved on to the UFC now, and you can see his world-class jiu-jitsu and pressure style in the UFC. But he was really famous for that same thing, that shoulder pressure on the jaw, or he would get like the sleeve and this hand and the collar on the same side as the sleeve, and so no underhook. He would drop that forearm to turn their jaw the other way, and that was his way of holding people down. Master of that, super good. But what's interesting about him is he would employ not a whole bunch, but he definitely employed speed passing to start. So he'd get moving, get going, and he'd start to get a little bit ahead, but instead of keep going until he finishes the pass, he would keep going until he found a good spot to hit the pressure pass, and then bam, the clamps went on, and then it was just insane pressure from there. Guy Mendes, mentioned him earlier. He's my personal professor. So his brother, Rafa Mendes, my other professor, he was one of the best speed passers ever, and he went the exact opposite route. I heard him talk about it before a little bit. It was Rafa was in a weight class where you got to see some of the pressure passing in that a little bit. More speed passing still, but some pressure passing. And Guy was basically like, he was already like into his coaching kind of mindset, and he was like coaching Rafa to a certain degree. And he would just study all the best people for Rafa to fight, and he would mimic what he saw until it turned into his own jiu-jitsu. He became super good at pressure passing is the point. And then, like I said earlier, he brought that different type of passing to a smaller weight class, and it was just something they hadn't really seen. I mean, I'm sure they saw pressure passing in like the 90s when that's all there was. And then as jiu-jitsu evolved and got more dynamic, no one in that division was doing that style anymore. and everyone was replaced. Those guys get old, retire, move on, and then the new young up and comers come back, and they haven't seen the old school pressure passing style. So, and then he didn't even just bring back old school pressure passing; he brought a new modern type of pressure passing to a small division. And like I said earlier, it looked pretty easy for him to pass almost everyone's guard in that division. And then, of course, I have to include Murillo Santana on this list. So he's one of those guys that he was never like super popular or a big giant fan favorite, but among the actual like world class athletes that I ever heard any world class athlete talk about rolling with Murillo Santana is he was one of those dudes that's in the training room was unbeatable. He just couldn't quite make it. He's obviously a world class competitor, but never was able to connect and have that same type of success that he has in the training room. But all these world class people, like the Meows, I heard them talk about it, but they say his pressure was insane. Like it just didn't make sense, and he would just cut through everyone's guard. And then I would include Tynan Dalper in this list, but I think he's kind of in his own class. He might be the best ever at combining the speed with the pressure. So it'd be speed to get to a spot, right to pressure. If he needs the move or change, use quick speed, switch, and then back to the pressure. So I don't know. It's hard to kind of like put him in a single box. He uses both very well. And I've rolled with him personally when he was a purple belt and I was a brown belt. And it was just outclassed. Like I never felt in danger. I never felt like he was about to hurt me in any way. I just felt like he outclassed me. It's like I was a little kid rolling with my dad or something. It was just, he had to answer, and it was quick. His mind worked fast. He was ready for everything that I was going to do. There was no thoughts in between. It was just bam, 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 on to the next one. But with that, this is going to conclude the pressure passing video. Again, make sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for the conclusion to the mini-series, and I'll tell you which is objectively, the better style of guard passing, pressure or speed. Don't forget, like and subscribe, please.